Thursday, 20 past 2 in the afternoon. Hargrove and Associates Veterinary Clinic on the east side of Halifax. A woman in a charcoal blazer walked through the glass door holding a cat carrier in one hand and a thermos in the other, the way someone walks when they have already been to 2 places before this and have 3 more to go before dark. The man behind the intake counter did not look up right away. He was finishing a note in pencil on a patient chart, and he finished it before he looked because that was the kind of man he was. His name was Joel Ardmore. He was 38 years old, and he had the hands of someone who had spent most of his adult life working with them. Not rough in a careless way, but worn at the edges the way good tools get worn. The woman set the carrier on the counter. Inside, a gray tabby pressed its nose against the mesh door and made no sound. "I called this morning," she said, "about a senior cat, possible renal issue." Joel looked at the chart attached to the intake board. Her name was written there, Sasha Verne. He looked at it the way he looked at everything useful. Once, completely, and then filed it. "I see it," he said. "Dr. Holt is with another patient. It'll be about 20 minutes. Sasha Verne checked her watch. She did not sigh, but something in the set of her shoulders said she had considered it. "I have a call at 3. Joel looked at the cat. He looked at the chart. He opened the carrier latch 2 inches and let the tabby sniff his knuckle. The cat butted its forehead against his fingers. "He's not in pain right now," Joel said. "He's anxious." "The ride." She looked at him for the first time. "Not the chart. Him. Can you tell that just from the way he's holding his ears? And he's leaning toward you, not away from you. He trusts you. That usually means he's not in crisis, just scared." A pause. Her call was at 3. She stayed anyway. The clinic was the kind of place that operated on a clear hierarchy. Dr. Holt was the owner, 61, built like a retired hockey player, loud about his opinions on everything from feline nutrition to municipal politics. His 2 associate veterinarians deferred to him in public and rolled their eyes at him in the break room. The 3 vet techs moved in the space between, doing most of the work that kept the clinic running, and Joel was the senior tech, which meant he did the work that required the most skill, and received the title that came with the least authority. He had been at Hargrove for 4 years. Before that he had done something else entirely, but he didn't talk about that, and nobody at the clinic had ever thought to ask. Dr. Holt emerged from the back at 18 minutes past the hour. He saw Sasha Verne at the counter and his posture changed, not obviously, but Joel noticed, the way Joel noticed most things. Holt recognized money. It was an animal reflex with him. "Ms. Verne." He extended a hand. "The practice administrator mentioned you'd be coming in." She shook at once. Her rings were not flashy, her shoes were. "I appreciate you fitting him in." Holt glanced at the carrier, then at Joel with the specific look that meant, "You've been talking to my client without authorization. Go do something else." Joel picked up a clipboard and moved toward the back. He had learned to read that look in the first week. Through the narrow window in the treatment room door, he watched Holt examine the cat with a practiced ease that was genuine. Holt was a capable vet, whatever else was true about him. The man knew animals. He was less reliable about people. Sasha Verne stood at the exam table and watched with her arms crossed, not defensively, but the way someone crosses their arms when they are paying attention and don't want to move their hands. Joel went back to his charts. At 3:45, she came out from the exam room alone, carrying the empty carrier. The cat was staying overnight for blood work. She stopped at the counter, not at Holt's door. "Is it always like this with older cats?" she asked. "They just stop eating, and you can't tell why until it's already been going on for weeks?" Joel put down his pen. "Usually," he said, "they're private about discomfort. It's not the same as hiding it, they just don't have a way to say it." She absorbed that. He had the sense that she absorbed everything the same way, carefully, without rushing. She left at 4 minutes to 4. She did not look back. Holt appeared at Joel's elbow 30 seconds later. "You realize who that is?" Joel kept his eyes on the chart. "No. Sasha Verne. She runs Verne Capital. They just acquired half the medical real estate on the Halifax waterfront." He folded his arms. "I want to handle her file personally from here on. If she calls, patch her through to me." Joel nodded. "Sure." He said it the way he said most things at this clinic. Quietly, without inflection. The way a person speaks when they have decided that the gap between what they think and what they say is not worth closing. His daughter was waiting for him at the school pickup line at 5:15. Her name was Olive. She was 7 years old, and she had her mother's eyes, brown and very direct. and a little unsettling in the way that very direct eyes can be on a 7-year-old. She climbed into the passenger seat and immediately began telling him about an injustice that had occurred at recess involving a skipping rope and someone named Tabitha, and Joel drove and listened and asked the right questions. And, by the time they pulled into the lot above Agricola Street, Olive had solved the problem to her own satisfaction and moved on to wanting pasta for dinner. They ate pasta at a table that seated 4 and always had. Now, the 4th chair had a cardigan on it that nobody had moved. After Olive was in bed, Joel sat on the couch with a cup of tea that went cold and a book he didn't read. On the coffee table was a manila envelope from a legal office in Toronto. It had been there for 2 weeks. He had opened it once, read the first page, and set it back down. He did not open it again tonight. The cat's name, Joel learned the next morning, was Pemberton. The blood work showed early-stage chronic kidney disease, serious but manageable, the kind of thing that with the right diet and monitoring could mean 2 or 3 good years instead of 6 months. Joel updated the chart and flagged the dietary protocol before Dr. Holt arrived. When Sasha Verne came in at noon to collect Pemberton, Holt materialized from somewhere in the back with impressive speed. "We've put together a full care plan," he said. "I'll walk you through it personally." She looked at the chart in Joel's hand. "I'd like him to walk me through it," she said. Holt's smile stayed in place. Joel is our vet tech. He's excellent, of course, but for a case like this, owner education really benefits from. "I understand the difference between a technician and a veterinarian," she said. "I'm asking him." There was a silence that lasted exactly long enough to be uncomfortable. Holt stepped back, his smile thinned by 2 degrees. Joel set the chart on the counter and spent 12 minutes explaining the renal diet, the hydration protocol, the medication schedule, and the signs to watch for. He did not rush. He answered her questions directly, and her questions were good, specific, sequential, the questions of someone who had already done some reading and wanted to verify it against a human source. When he finished, she said, "Thank you. That was the clearest anyone has explained anything to me in a long time." She picked up the carrier. Pemberton pressed his face against the mesh and looked at Joel with the steady, slightly accusatory gaze of a cat who has been poked and prodded and is choosing to be gracious about it. Joel gave him 2 fingers through the mesh. "Eat your food," he said. Sasha Verne watched that. She watched it the way she had watched him with Pemberton the day before, filing it somewhere. Holt found Joel in the supply room 20 minutes later. "You know she's a client, not a networking opportunity." Joel restocked the syringes. "I know, I handle her file. I said that clearly. You were in surgery." Holt took a step into the room. He was a large man and he used that when he wanted to. Joel was not a small man either, but he didn't use it. "You've got a lot of confidence for someone whose references I never fully checked," Holt said. "I hired you on a recommendation from DeVoe out in Truro, and I've been meaning to look into your background properly for about 3 years now. Don't give me a reason." Joel met his eyes. Okay, that was the conversation. It had the shape of a warning but the sound of something else. A man reminding another man that he had leverage. Joel went back to work. He had heard that tone before in other rooms, from other men, and the thing he had learned was that people who used it usually needed to. That evening, Olive found the manila envelope on the coffee table. "What's this, Dad?" "Just papers." She put it back carefully, the way she handled things that seemed important to adults. She was unusually good at reading the temperature of a room for a 7-year-old. She got it from her mother, and also, possibly, from having grown up in a house where the temperature changed without warning. She climbed onto the couch beside him and leaned her head against his arm and said, "Is Pemberton going to be okay?" He had mentioned the cat at dinner. He had not said much. "He's going to have some good years," Joel said. Olive thought about this. She was the kind of child who thought before she said things, which was not common in 2nd grade. "I think people should have good years too," she said, "not just cats." Joel put his arm around her. "You're right," he said, "they should." Sasha Verne called the clinic the following Tuesday. She asked for Holt's extension and was transferred to him. Joel didn't know about the call until Thursday, when Holt stopped at his station with an expression that was performing neutrality and not quite achieving it. "She's asked me to arrange a home visit for the cat. Monitoring check, hydration assessment." He paused. "I've scheduled you for Saturday morning. She asked for you to send the tech. She asked for you specifically." He said it like something that tasted off. "I told her you were our most experienced technician." He walked away before Joel could answer. Saturday at 9:30, Joel rang the bell at a sandstone row house on Roby Street, the old part, where the trees were tall and the front steps had worn grooves from 100 years of foot traffic. Not a showy address, a serious one. Sasha Verne opened the door in jeans and bare feet, and reading glasses pushed up on her head. She looked different outside the clinic, less managed, more like herself somehow, although he had no basis for that distinction yet. She led him through to the kitchen. Pemberton was on a fleece blanket in a patch of morning sun, eating from a ceramic bowl with the air of a cat who had negotiated these conditions and was satisfied. Joel crouched and assessed him without a word. Coat condition, gum color. The feel of his spine under the fur. He took the hydration reading, checked the lymph nodes, listened to the kidney region. It took 9 minutes. He's responding well, Joel said. You've been consistent with the diet. I'm good at schedules, she said. She was watching him from the kitchen doorway with a mug in both hands. It's the only thing I'm reliably good at, actually. He looked up. She said it without self-pity, which was what made it land. He wrote the observations in the chart. She poured him coffee he hadn't asked for, and he drank it because declining seemed more complicated than accepting. They sat at the kitchen table. Pemberton relocated to the windowsill. Outside, a delivery truck moved slowly down Roby Street, its engine low in the Saturday quiet. She said, "You didn't go to school to be a vet tech." It wasn't a question. Joel turned his mug once. "No. What did you study?" "Comparative pathology," he said. "Graduate level." At Dalhousie. She absorbed this. She did not perform surprise. And then, regulatory consulting for veterinary pharmaceuticals. He 5 years in Ottawa. Then another 3 with a firm in Vancouver. He paused. Then I came back here. She waited. She was good at waiting, he noticed. She didn't fill silence with noise. "My wife died," he said. 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to end. He kept his voice even. The same way he kept it even when he explained diagnoses to clients. It was not that he didn't feel it. It was that he had learned the difference between feeling something and performing it. Olive was 3. I wanted her to grow up in the city where I grew up, close to my parents, in a school where I could walk to pick her up. So I took the most skilled job I could find that would let me be here. That was Hargrove. Sasha looked at him across the table. And the work that came before? He looked at Pemberton on the windowsill. I stopped missing it about a year in, he said, which surprised me. I thought I would miss it more. She nodded slowly. The way someone nods when they're not agreeing but when something has clicked somewhere in the back of their mind. My husband left 3 years ago, she said. Not died. Left, which is different in ways I'm still finding out about. She turned her mug on the table, matching the movement he'd made. Ivy is 5. She starts school in September. I moved back here from Toronto 8 months ago so she'd have her grandmother, and so I could run the Halifax operations without flying every 2 weeks. She paused. I keep telling myself those were the reasons. Joel waited. She smiled, just lightly. I think the actual reason was that I was very tired, and Toronto is a very large city in which to be very tired. He smiled then too, briefly. It changed his face. They sat with the morning quiet for a moment that stretched past where it would have broken in another conversation. Before he left, she said, "The clinic sent me a quote for ongoing monitoring. It was under Dr. Holt's signature." She handed him a printout. He looked at it. The numbers were padded. Not fraudulently, but noticeably. He had seen this before. Holt reserved his honest pricing for clients he thought would comparison shop. He handed it back without comment. He was halfway down the front steps when she said, "Joel." He turned. "Will you give me your direct number? In case Pemberton has a rough night." It was a reasonable clinical request. He gave her the number. He told himself it was a reasonable clinical request. He drove home via the long way, along the waterfront, where the October light was thin and bright and the harbor was doing what the Halifax harbor did in October, which was, look like the edge of something worth thinking about. At home, Olive was at the kitchen table, drawing an elaborate picture of a horse with impractical wings. She did not look up when he came in, but she said, "How was the cat?" "Good," he said. "He's doing well." "Good," she said. She added another wing. "I'm glad." The call from Holt came the following Wednesday at 7:30 in the evening. Joel let it ring twice before he answered. "You went to a client's home and you gave her your personal contact number," Holt said. "She asked for it. For after-hours concerns about the patient. She called you. Not the clinic." The clinic was closed. A pause. Long enough that Joel could hear Holt breathing through his nose. I want to be clear, Holt said, about what you are here. You are not a veterinary partner. You are not a client liaison. You are a technician, and a very good one, and if you would like to remain one, you'll direct Ms. Verne back to the clinic line. Joel said, she's the client. She gets to choose who she's comfortable talking to. Don't test me, Ardmore. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what happens when a tech starts thinking there's something else. He let that settle. There's also the matter of your incomplete file. If I start digging into your employment history before Hargrove, and I find gaps or irregularities, you understand what I'm saying. The line went quiet. Joel understood what he was saying. What he did not say, what he had not said to anyone at this clinic in 4 years, was that his employment history before Hargrove included 9 years as a consultant for Meridian Veterinary Sciences, the third largest animal pharmaceutical supplier in Canada. That during those 9 years he had co-authored 2 papers on drug interaction protocols that were now cited as standard reference in veterinary toxicology programs at 3 Canadian universities. That he had been offered a directorship in Ottawa that he had turned down for reasons that had nothing to do with his qualifications. That the incomplete file Holt was threatening to investigate would, if fully examined, raise a different question. Not about Joel's credentials, but about whether Holt's clinic deserved to have him. He had not said any of this because he had not needed to. Because the gap between what he was and what the name tag on his chest said he was, had never, in 4 years, actually mattered. It was starting to matter now. He sat for a long time after Holt hung up. In the next room, Olive was asleep, one arm around a stuffed owl named Gerald that had lost one eye and all of its dignity but none of Olive's devotion. The nightlight made a yellow oval on the wall. On the kitchen table, the manila envelope from Toronto sat where it always sat. He opened it this time. He read it completely. Then he sat for a while longer with it flat on the table in front of him, and what he felt was not the thing he had expected to feel. He had expected something cold and final. What he felt instead was a small, quiet shift, the way a door moves when someone on the other side leans against it. He picked up his phone. He sent one text. To Sasha Verne, at 11:14 at night, he wrote, Pemberton had a follow-up question and I answered it. She replied 40 seconds later, he told me. He said you explained it very clearly. He put the phone face down on the table. He was smiling, which was unexpected. Holt arrived at the clinic the following Monday in a better mood than usual, which meant something had gone well on the weekend. He stopped in the break room where Joel was reading a journal, a veterinary toxicology journal, which he had been reading for 4 years without anyone here asking him why, and set a printed email on the table without a word. Joel read it. It was from the managing board of Verne Capital, formal letterhead, 3 sentences. They were exploring a significant investment in a veterinary clinic network across the Atlantic provinces. They had requested an in-person consultation with the full clinical team at Hargrove & Associates. Holt's hand pressed flat on the table. He was not a subtle man about money. This is exactly the kind of relationship I've been building, he said. I want you present for this meeting. You're good in a room, I'll give you that. But you follow my lead in there. This is not the moment for you to be the expert on anything. Joel looked at the email. He read it a second time. He recognized the language. He had written very similar language once, a long time ago, for a different kind of proposal. He knew what it meant. He knew what the specific request for full clinical team meant, and it did not mean what Holt thought it meant. Okay, Joel said. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. On Wednesday evening, Joel drove to Roby Street. She opened the door before he knocked. Pemberton was draped over her shoulder like a living scarf. She looked at Joel and she looked at his expression and she said, "Come in." They sat at the kitchen table. Pemberton relocated to a chair. Ivy, Sasha's daughter, wandered in from somewhere down the hall, 5 years old, dark-eyed, carrying a toy horse with purple hair, and examined Joel with the frank assessment of a small child who has not yet learned to pretend she isn't examining you. "Hi," Ivy said Joel. "That's my cat," she said. "He has a kidney." "He has 2, Joel said. "They're both doing okay." Ivy accepted this as satisfactory and wandered back out. They sat across from each other. The kitchen light was warm. Outside it was raining the way Halifax rains in November, not dramatically, just constantly, as if rain were the default setting and anything else was the aberration. "The meeting tomorrow," she said. He nodded. "I asked for the full clinical team because I wanted to see how Holt handles being in a room where he isn't the most qualified person. She turned her mug. It's something I do before I invest. See who manages themselves well under pressure and who manages their ego instead. He looked at her. What do you know about me? He said. Actually, no. She was quiet for a moment. I know that you read Meridian's quarterly technical bulletins. They come to the clinic under your subscription, not the practices. I noticed that 2 months ago. I ran a search last night. Your name appears as second author on a toxicology protocol paper published in 2019 in the Canadian Veterinary Journal. The first author was a researcher at Guelph. The paper is cited 31 times. She folded her hands on the table. I also know that whatever reason you had for leaving that work, it wasn't incompetence. Joel didn't speak for a long time. He said, after my wife died, I couldn't sit in rooms where everything was about compounds and trials and balance sheets. I needed to be in a room where someone was actually sick and I was actually helping them. He paused. I needed work that felt like the same size as the day. He glanced toward the hallway where Ivy had disappeared, and I needed to be home by 5. Sasha Verne was looking at him the way she had looked at him that first afternoon in the clinic. Over the carrier, when he had told her about the way a cat holds its ears. Measuring him, he had thought then. He understood now that measuring wasn't quite the right word. She was trusting him, carefully and methodically. The way a person trusts something that has been the same under pressure, enough times that it becomes reliable data. The board meeting, she said. I want you in that room, not as a vet tech, as what you actually are. The proposal I'm building is for a network of clinics with an actual clinical oversight structure, not just a brand on the door but a research-linked model, proper protocols, a medical director who can hold the science to a standard. She met his eyes. I need someone who can build that, not just someone who knows what it is. Joel was quiet. He thought of Olive, asleep down a hall 20 minutes from here. He thought of the envelope on the kitchen table, finally read, which contained among other things a deferred offer from his former firm that had somehow, inexplicably, stubbornly, remained open for 2 years past its stated expiry. He thought of the 7 years he had spent in rooms like the one Sasha was describing, writing protocols, building standards, watching them matter. He thought of the look on Holt's face when he said, "You are a technician." He looked at the woman across the table. "I'm going to need a few days," he said. "Take them," she said. The meeting on Thursday was in the Hargrove boardroom, which was also the room where they held staff reviews and stored the backorder supplies. Because Holt had not thought, when renovating, to make the spaces different purposes. Holt opened with 15 minutes on the clinic's history, its patient volume, its reputation in the community. He was polished, he was good, he believed every word he said, which helped. Sasha's team listened without expression. Then her director of acquisitions, a woman named Paulette Chan, who had the manner of someone who had sat in 1,000 of these meetings and had long ago stopped being impressed by any of them, asked a single question. Who is responsible for your clinical oversight protocols? Specifically, how are drug interaction standards determined and reviewed? Holt looked at the table. He looked at his materials. He did not look at Joel. We operate according to standard provincial guidelines, he said. Reviewed annually. Paulette Chen wrote something on her notepad. In the pause that followed, Sasha turned and looked at Joel directly. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Joel said, Dr. Holt follows provincial standard, which is correct as a baseline.
Our medication protocols are sound.
If what you're asking is whether the clinic currently has a systems-level research integration, a mechanism for tracking emerging interaction data and building it into active protocols, it doesn't. That's a gap I've noticed for 4 years. The room was very quiet. Holt had gone very still in the way that meant he was not going to interrupt, because he had not yet decided what to do, and interrupting prematurely would cost him more than silence. Joel kept going. I spent 9 years in pharmaceutical regulatory consulting before I came here. The model you're describing, research-linked, protocol-driven, with actual scientific oversight. I've built versions of it before, smaller, but the architecture's the same. I know what it costs to do it wrong, and I know what it takes to do it right. He set his hands flat on the table. If you want, I can walk you through what the right version looks like. Paulette Chen clicked her pen. Please, she said. He talked for 22 minutes. He did not use notes. He used the precise, unhurried language of someone describing something they had thought about carefully for a long time. Not in anticipation of this moment, but simply because thinking carefully was how he moved through the world. Holt did not speak once. At the end of the meeting, when the Vern Capital team filed out, Paulette Chen paused at the door and said, "To nobody in particular." That was the clearest technical presentation I've heard in about 3 years of looking at clinic acquisitions. The room emptied. Sasha was last. She paused at the door. She looked at Holt, whose expression had passed through several stages and arrived at something carefully blank. Then she looked at Joel. She did not say, "I told you so." She did not say anything, but the way she held the door open for a moment before she let it close said something Joel understood clearly. Holt found him in the car park at 5:30. The scene that followed was not loud. Loud would have been easier. It was the other kind, controlled, quiet, with the specific weight of a man who understands he has lost ground and does not intend to lose the next exchange too. "I don't know what you think just happened in there," Holt said. Joel zipped his jacket. The November air was damp and cold. "I think I answered a question honestly. You blindsided me in front of a major investor. You asked me not to be an expert. I waited as long as I could." Holt stepped closer. He was doing the large man thing again. Joel did not step back. "You've been hiding your background for 4 years, Holt said. "From me. That's a breach of the employment relationship regardless of what your actual credentials are." Joel looked at him. "I answered every question you asked me in the hiring interview," he said. "You didn't ask very many." He paused. "You told me 2 weeks ago you'd been meaning to look into my background for 3 years and hadn't gotten around to it. That's not a hidden past. That's a gap in your attention." Holt's jaw tightened. "Don't come back Monday," he said. Joel picked up his bag. "I'll come back Monday to finish the Pemberton follow-up notes and hand over the active files cleanly." He looked at Holt for a moment. "After that, I think you're right." He drove home. He picked up Olive from his mother's house, where she had spent the afternoon learning to make bannock, and had flour in her hair and a look of profound satisfaction on her face. She climbed into the car and immediately began telling him about the bannock, and he drove and listened and asked the right questions. At home she found the manila envelope on the counter where he'd left it, still open. "What is this?" "Papers," he said. "Good ones this time." She squinted at it. "Is it a job?" "Something like that." She put it back the same way she put everything back, carefully, in exactly the position she'd found it. "Will it make you happy?" He thought about it, which she noticed, because she noticed when he actually thought about things versus when he gave an answer. "I think so," he said. "Yes." She nodded, satisfied, and went to wash the flour off her face. That night he texted Sasha, "I handed in my notice today." She replied, "I know. Holt called me this afternoon." And she sent 3 words. He was loud. And then, after a pause, "Are you all right?" He sat with that for a moment. The question and the fact of it, that she had asked it before asking anything about the job or the timeline or the proposal, that the first thing had been, "Are you all right?" "Yes," he replied. "I think I am." 4 weeks later, Sasha Vern registered Meridian North Clinical Oversight as a federally incorporated entity, with Joel Ardmore named as Director of Clinical Standards. The office was 3 blocks from Hargrove and Associates, on the 2nd floor of a building that smelled like cedar and old paper and someone's coffee from the floor below. The windows looked out over the neighborhood, and on clear days, which were not common in Halifax in December but did occasionally happen, you could see a strip of harbor between the buildings. On the day the sign went up, plain white letters on dark blue, because that was how Sasha did things. Olive came by after school because the school was 4 blocks away and because Joel had told her she could. She stood on the sidewalk and looked at it with her head tilted. Director of Clinical Standard, and she read carefully. "That's a long title." "It is," Joel agreed. "What does it mean?" "It means I make sure the medicine is right." She thought about this. "Like for Pemberton?" "Like for Pemberton," he said. "Okay," she said. "That's good." She took his hand the way she still did when she was thinking about something and needed the connection without needing the conversation. They stood there for a moment on the sidewalk in the December cold, looking at the new sign, while the harbor did its thing in the distance and the city moved around them the way cities do, indifferent and continuous and full of people carrying their own versions of the same weight. He was 38 years old, and he had spent 4 years being quietly, accurately underestimated, and the thing that was coming had not been revenge. It had not been restoration. It had been, in the end, the same thing it always was for him: small, ordinary, irreplaceable. A child's hand in his, a sign on a building, a woman's question, "Are you all right?" He was. On a Saturday in early February, Sasha pulled up outside the office in a sensible Volvo that Ivy had named Leonard and Pemberton regarded with deep suspicion. Olive was already at the window when the car stopped, having heard the engine from upstairs, and identified it with the accuracy of a child who has learned the sounds of things that matter. She came down the stairs at a speed that was technically not running and stood at the front step as Ivy climbed out with a drawing tucked under one arm, a horse purple-maned, recognizable from its previous iterations, and Pemberton in a carrier, calm and unimpressed as ever. Olive looked at the drawing. "Is that Leonard?" she said. Ivy considered. "No, this one's Biscuit." "Obviously," said Olive, with the tone of someone who should have known. "Can I see him?" They went inside. Joel watched from the doorway as the two girls sat on the floor and Pemberton was released from the carrier and immediately sat on Ivy's shoe, as if this was his apartment and they were the guests, and he was being courteous about it. Sasha stopped beside him in the doorway. "He's gained 12 grams, she said, since last week." "That's a good sign." She smiled. It was the real one, the one that took a moment to arrive. She had a habit of arriving at things slowly and then holding them firmly once she got there. "Are you staying for lunch?" he said. She looked at him. "I'm staying," she said. "Not for lunch specifically, just in general." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, the way he nodded when something important had been said and didn't need to be said again. Inside, Olive and Ivy were arguing pleasantly about the horse's name, and Pemberton had relocated to a patch of winter light on the floor, and the office smelled like cedar and coffee and, faintly, improbably, like a family trying on its shape.